there's a phrase I'm going to touch on first, and we'll come back to the definition of the word mistake. A lot of times people will talk about the debriefing of something that went wrong, of a bad decision, an action that we took that turned out to be incorrect. Well, there's kind of the dictionary definition of mistake, right? It's a decision, an action, we move forward, and then we learn, okay, didn't work out the way we expected to some degree. But people will use this phrase, they'll say, oh, that was an unintended mistake. I'm like, that's a delightfully redundant phrase. Like by definition, like we don't need to tack on unintended, right? A mistake is a decision of action, or sometimes a decision to maintain the status quo, a decision that we think is right in the moment, or we wouldn't do it. And I've had a guest say that before. I think of Congressman Will Hurd, when he was a guest in episode 2. I was going back and re-listening to his episode. He said something about his mistake where he ended up losing the primary. He said, if I knew it was a mistake, I wouldn't have done it. Again, like by definition, right? So I think, a mistake, there's the hindsight evaluation. We might make a decision or take an action and realize seconds later, or days or weeks or months or sometimes years later, that it was a mistake. And I think talking about mistakes helps. I think at least it helps me personally. When I call out or admit a mistake, it kind of helps normalize the fact that, well, the mistake exists. The mistake is a fact. How I choose to feel about it is then the next question after recognizing and admitting the mistake. Hopefully we can take a kind and constructive approach in the aftermath of a mistake, whether it's ours or somebody else's.
Now, you have a really beautiful definition of favorite mistake.
Yeah.
So what's the distinction between a mistake and a favorite mistake?
Yeah, it's fine. When I started the podcast, I figured it was a good open-ended question, to let people think about and reflect on. I've learned you've got to make sure somebody's not caught off guard by that question. Like, it's hard to come up with something on the spot, but given enough time to reflect and prep, people decide a favorite mistake. It's pretty subjective, but I think generally what it turns out being, looking at the pattern of 215 plus guests at this point, yourself included, a favorite mistake, it may or may not be the same as a quote unquote biggest mistake or worst mistake. I mean, the question about what's your favorite mistake or what's a favorite mistake, I mean, it's inspired by the old Sheryl Crow song from about 30 years ago. There's that phrase, but I think a favorite is generally something that is big enough or meaningful enough where there was probably some sting when you discovered the mistake or when you were going through it.